So, welcome everybody to Choosing Beyond Beyond, and today choosing beyond justifying your existence with myself, Alan Jones, and my awesome co-host, the delicious Keisha-Licious, Keisha Clark.
Hello. I like that, Keisha-Licious. I like that. That's yummy. That's
You could
juicy.
change it like Phoebe did on Friends, and you could be Princess Consuela Banana Hammock.
Yes.
Princess Consuela Keisha-Licious.
Consuela Keisha-Licious.
I love
Say that
that.
12 times.
Consuela Keisha-Licious. So, justifying your existence, reasons and justifications. Keisha, kick us off with how did we get to this conversation?
Well, we were having a visit, and we were perceiving an energy. We were, asking like, what conversation wants to be had, what's up, what were we really aware of, and I think both of us kind of around the same point in the conversation, we were like, what is that? And it was this interesting energy around the hiding, like we'd been talking about the hiding, the not showing up, the not being seen, the not choosing more, or the unwillingness to choose more. And it kind of came up around this, but you have to have a reason or a justification. And that is when the energy started to pop, and we were like, oh, we started to look at how much of that goes on for so many of us. And we were like, let's talk about that. And it's talked about. So like, if this is your first time joining us on a Choosing Beyond Beyond conversation, Alan and I, we started this to really play with the conversations we always wanted to have that we really hadn't chosen. And there's a lot of conversations about being seen in the world, choosing to show up, and all of that. For me, one of the things I'm curious about, it's like we've bought the lie, I'm going to call it a lie, that we should have a reason for being. And so I'm curious to see as we dive into that, because I don't hear many of those conversations. Not that I want to explore the reasons for not, for being. It's more of like, wherever we're sticking ourselves unconsciously with the energy of that lie in the way that it's showing up uniquely for us, I'm ready to clear some of that, blow some of that shit up. So what about you, Alan?
Yeah, I was immediately going to launch in with a question, which is, so what is your reason for being?
Yeah.
So let's play with that. So there's someone's pain in the ear. Ow. Sorry. Woo. Wonder what that is.
Interesting.
Just as I asked the question, so what's my reason for being? My reason for being is to exist. My reason for being is, I have no choice. My reason for being, I have no choice.
You have no choice but to be here?
Yeah. And it's like, as an infinite being, you're infinitely here, you're infinitely everywhere. How did that happen?
I'm hearing that phrase, I think, therefore I am.
Right, yeah. And there's a lot of thinking going on in my head.
Now, I could call bullshit on that.
Yeah.
And that would be my thing. And at the same time, I get that there's a little something else there. Like that we think is information. It is showing us something.
Yeah.
However, the thinking in and of itself is not the validation or the verification that we exist.
So what do we know about our existence that we've never acknowledged? What do you know? It is a choice.
And so like, how could you not exist? Like, that's one of my, could you ever not exist? Have you ever not existed?
No, but my cognitive mind can't get my head around it.
Right.
Because what was before that?
Exactly.
Where did I come from and who created me? And
Yeah.
that's this reality. That's getting caught up in the infinite loop of insanity of, well, I must have come from somewhere. What if I don't need to know?
Yeah.
You know, what if I don't need to cognitively know?
So you can see where all the stories came from.
Yeah.
You know, all of this throughout the millions of years of our existence, all of these, there's like this need or this compulsion to explain us. And then it turns into a justification. And so what is it between that desire to know, like the curiosity, that goes from the curiosity to this sense of, oh, I have to prove and justify?
Well, that's the bastardization, is it? That's where it's been taken out of context, because to live curiously, it's not about reasons and justifications. If you look at, so like Einstein, who was a great thinker, quotes, he lived his life curiously. It wasn't about justifying anything. It was just about, if I do this, what will happen?
Yeah.
If I do this, what will it create? Okay, awesome. And in this reality, the cognitive brain will not necessarily understand anything unless it's experienced it. So it's like I have to justify to myself what that is. It's something, it is for me a lie that I've bought as true. And it started for me when I was very young with, why did you do that? Why did you do that? And that's what's kind of kicked it off for me. And then, of course, so what is it? Do we even need to understand the reason this reality requires reasons and justifications? Or can we just choose beyond it and know that that's what they require? Because if you function from infinite being, you can choose whatever you choose without having to justify it to yourself. Mm-hmm. And then there are people who still function within this reality where you can ask what's required here without getting caught up in the story.
Yeah.
Because how much do we use justifying our existence or justifying anything
everywhere
as a way to not make ourselves wrong?
Look at how we're educated. Look at the model, if you will, of what is. It's what's presented as how we're supposed to do this, like the process. You know, we get an education, and then we get an education in the specific specialty or expertise. You know,
so is it need to understand?
Yeah, and then we have to have all of this story to tell people how we got there. Like, go to anyone's website, right? Or Facebook page, or Instagram account, whatever. And you see a sort of a model, an example of this, you know, like, here's who I am, and here's why I'm doing this, and this is what brought me here, and, you know, and that's great, and it does have application. I mean, I don't imagine we're going to see a world where you just go to a website and it's somebody's picture, you know, with no words. And, like, I notice as I'm playing with my website, you know, all of my whole life is changing right now. So, like, everything is being redone and reworked. And as I've looked at what do I want to put in, you know, what copy do I want to create, and what do I want to say, and how do I want to present this, I'm even more aware of how often I go into explaining me and a backstory and a justification for why I be the way I be and why I do what I do. And it's like, what I'm getting is, when I'm coming from that energy, I'm almost begging people to like me.
Okay.
And that was yucky.
Wow. Because that's the thing. It's like, how can I relate to someone unless I have a story to tell them?
Right?
What if we don't choose to have people around us who require the story?
Oh, yeah.
So what are we unwilling to lose? That if we were willing to lose it, we would be able to let go of the story for good.
Ooh, the story makes us money. That's the belief.
And it can. And what if we can use it to our advantage rather than making it greater than us and making it real and solid? It's like, okay, this reality requires reasons and justifications and story. Okay. So what's required here? And what if I can do that without getting caught up in the energy of it? And what if I choose to be around people where it's not required?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hey, Jojo.
Hello.
I've just muted you. Sorry. So everyone's muted, and it's fine. If you want to ask a question, then pop it in the chat room, and we'll call you on. You can talk. It's fine. We're not. I want to say we're not kind of telecom Nazis, but that's probably not very politically correct. So I'm not. Actually, I'm not sorry, but. So
don't justify yourself.
Yeah, and disclaimer, we do swear. I better get that out there. I'm so used to doing it on the radio now.
Wherever the energy takes us.
So
I love that. Keep going with that.
Yeah, so it's cause and effect. Cause and effect reality is, so that's kind of part of it. That's an element of it. But there is that need to understand it, I cannot relate to anyone unless I have a reason, justification, and a story. No one will want to talk to me. No one will even understand me. There'll be no. Why would I choose anything if there's no reason for it?
Well, is it so? Like what I'm tapped into, or I'm aware of, is how much we function from this getting it right so that we would be accepted by others, and so that, like if in the case of entrepreneurs, so that people will pay us, right? And so what else is there that we can be choosing and creating? So this explanation of why we're, oh, there it is, the why. So, and I get that that's a popular tool, and it's also, it can be a very pragmatic tool in a way, depending on how you apply it. And the way I see us using it is like as the significant piece of our work, the why, right?
Yeah.
And that is what triggers a lot of us into this justification, rather than the sharing our story to offer the information to people, but it having nothing to do with whether you like me or don't like me.
Well, it kind of almost comes back to the motivation thing. Why would I choose anything if there's no reason or justification for it? Why would I choose it? Why would I choose to be here? There must be some reason and justification for me to exist. There must be some reason and justification about why I chose my parents. If you get into all of this stuff, there must be some reason and justification as to why we chose to do this conversation. What if, and I'm just going to put this to everyone out there, the reason Keisha and I do these conversations, as far as I'm aware, is because they're fun. Because if nobody chose to join us on these conversations, we would still have them.
Yep.
Right? We're doing it because it's fun. That's the only reason. And that has been made so bad and wrong and hedonistic and irresponsible, and purely because other people are not willing to function from that space. And we've done it for so many years, it's been so ingrained. It's almost a bit like the experiment with the monkeys in the cage, and the one pushes the button and they get downed with water. And one by one they replace them till eventually none of the monkeys know why they don't push the button. They just don't push the button. Right. So it's like, what was the original thing that created reasons and justifications, the requirement for them? Hello, Pussycat.
Hey, love that contribution.
Do cats and dogs have any reasons? Do they just do what they do? Right?
They're just following the energy, man.
Right.
They're like, oh, something's interesting and shiny over here. Let's go. Oh, something smells yummy over here. Yeah.
And
It's like,
do that. They don't need a reason justification. They
exactly.
look at it from curiosity and go, wow, okay, I'm just going to do this.
Yeah, Josephine says, for a while I didn't share my story because I was told by the Bard practitioner who trained me not to tell it. So yeah, because there's obviously more than that too, as I always could have chosen beyond it. Bars practitioner. Yeah. And so if you're playing, I know that a number of people who will watch this play with the tools of access consciousness, and one of the 10 keys, 10 keys to success, 10 keys to freedom, I think is how it's phrased, is never buy, sell, or tell the story. And even in that, when they're explaining it, they're talking about if you're coming from your story being significant, much like what Alan and I are talking about, you've already limited the possibility of outcomes there for you. And typically, they're not really going to be the ones you truly desire. So it's more about the information, sharing the information. And let's face it, I mean, we are working within a largely conventional reality. We're working within, so I think to choose to not be aware of what people can receive would only be a disservice to ourselves as well as the people we're working with or interacting with. So we know that after we finish this conversation, there's still going to be lots of reason and justification going on. And it's more about, for me, it's more about, so what tools can we use to navigate the reality that is being shared by lots of people without making it real for us? So we put our story out there, and however people respond to it doesn't have to make us be in a different space with our story. We simply know it's our story.
Well, I mean, for me, the whole thing around the story is, yes, don't buy or tell the story. And as you said, not from a space of making it meaningful, significant, and real. And sometimes I will kind of tell or explain parts of kind of what I've experienced in my life so far. That's, if you can do it technically, but I suppose, I tell parts of my story in the way that actually can help people see things from a different point of view, and how I managed to kind of transition from where I was. So, for example, Delaney was talking about how she functioned for much of her life as a victim of abuse, and I did too. Until you get to the space where, using the tools, say, of access consciousness and other tools that I've used, you get to the space of, actually, well, I chose that. And it's to show people that another possibility is available to them than buying the story of, kind of, I was really abused as a child, was a difference of, I was abused as a child, that happened, I chose it, and actually I got a load from it. It gave me a great experience of life, and it taught me in some ways kind of allowance from my mother as where I'm at now. So it's like, how can you use the story to your advantage without making it real and significant? And so Martha's saying, I'm very tired of the different stories. And so Martha, I invite you to kind of say a bit more about that, because one of the first things that jumped to me is tired. I am tired. When you say I am tired, you're going to create that. And when you say stories, are they your stories that you're telling? What's the value of holding on to them and making them real?
Mm-hmm. And what are you aware of?
Yeah.
Martha? Yeah. How many people are telling the story from that desperation? Please like me. Please accept me. Please see my story, hear my story, and know that I'm okay. That I'm lovable, that I'm trustworthy, that I'm something, whatever, fill in the blank, right? And it's so interesting. So we go from that, why did you do that, as the 3-year-old, the 4-year-old, the 2-year-old, whatever. When that begins to be impelled into our universe, and I do get, like, throughout our childhood and teen years, like, that gets twisted up into I can't do something without being able to explain it or justify it or justify my choice to do it.
Oh, yes.
And yeah, so when we're in justification, is that a flag that we've already separated from ourselves?
Yeah, it's a signal. The minute we're justifying anything, how much doubt how much are we doubting ourselves? How much of the reasons and justifications always about justifying to ourselves, to prove to ourselves that we're not a bad person, that we're actually a good person, that we are kind, that we aren't mean, or whatever else it is? Reasons and justifications, what if they're never about trying to prove anything to anyone else? What if they're actually trying to prove to ourselves, because we already were in the space of doubt? So we're fraud patrolling ourselves, right? Because, how is a doubt question? How am I going to do this? How am I ever going to let go of this tidiness? How am I ever going to let go of this story? Well, you're already in the space of doubt. So, and so it's like,
That's so interesting.
Yeah, where did you decide?
We want somebody to do this for us. There's like this weird thing about, so if the moment I go into trying to justify me or my choice or something I've created or one of our shows, like, why did you pick that topic, blah, blah, blah. Typically I'm sharing with people, oh, this topic came to me, my show asked me to, invited me, blah, blah, blah. And, and so the moment that I try to justify my choice beyond, I chose it because I was curious and it was fun for me. It was light. I was following the energy. The moment I'm trying to make it okay that I chose it, I'm asking somebody else to approve.
Yeah.
And I'm therefore putting myself at the effect of someone else's thoughts and points of view and opinions and their own justifications and judgments, and I'm totally throwing myself under the bus. I mean, I'm saying that a little bit dramatically to make a point, and I'm also getting, like, the second I do that, the second I shift into functioning from asking you or anyone else to approve my choice, I've just abandoned me.
Well, absolutely. And you know what? A couple of things kind of sprung to mind as you were talking. One of them was asking for permission and someone else deciding they need to understand why you're choosing something before they give you permission. So we're constantly seeking permission until we get to the point where we want to be a rebel and go, well, I don't need permission anymore because I'm doing this just because I can. And there's still that element there of justification and approval, as you were talking about. And there was something else that pinged. But really, I think one of the big thing is about us needing to either relate to somebody else or to, to seek approval for what we're choosing. So we have to justify it. Why do you want that? I don't know why you want that. And we have to convince people around to our point of view. So, because where are we making other people the source of what we can choose?
Oh, gosh.
Right?
Lots of places.
Exactly. So we're making other people greater than us so that then we have to justify to them why we want to choose it, and then they give us permission to choose it. And for reasons and justifications for existence, what kind of higher power have we decided there is that then it's almost like God. If I can prove to God that I'm a good person, then I don't have to come back here anymore and I can go to heaven. There's like a justification, or I prove that I'm not.
I think you just tapped one of the nails on the heads. This whole perpetuation of the lie that some great ruler had to approve of us.
Yeah.
When really that is a human characteristic. Nature doesn't ask you to prove yourself before allowing you to enjoy any part of it. you just walk out into nature, and if you are able to receive that, you have amazing experiences relative to however you receive that. So it's interesting that as a part of our story, depending on which belief structure you're playing in, there is this element of the not worthiness.
Yeah.
And that is one of the fundamental pieces that things are built on, which is, when you look at some of the original context, the original, when you look at the stories in the syntax, am I saying that correctly? In context of when they were being developed is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
There's more of a sacredness there. Like some of the founding principles of those stories actually have this very esoteric and very like beyond linear root to them. And then things have been kind of laid over those, the essence of those stories, and then created these rules.
Yeah.
Under which we're then required to buy that you have to prove yourself to be worthy of whatever form of deity is involved in that belief structure. So the need to, what is that?
There's control. There's a control element.
There's a controlling factor from those who were implementing the story, and then there's like that need for validation is part of what is triggered by the way those stories, the rules of those stories became to be implemented.
And where are we trying to control back with our story? Right.
Yeah.
Okay. What a reason for justification. I'm going to give you such a good justification. Yeah, absolutely, Joseph.
Right.
Need your permission. Yeah, we were talking about that just a minute ago. So it's like, I will try and control you back. So at the end of the day, like, what if we can out manipulate the people by telling them whatever they're required to know without getting caught up in the story? Because that's the thing, isn't it? It's like, if you were out of control and didn't try and control everything, what could you choose? Would you really require anybody? No, I don't require someone's permission to murder my partner. I could just go and do it. I don't, because it doesn't work for me right now. Would I ever at the moment? You know, I wouldn't say I wouldn't. You know, I've contemplated it. And it's quite scary, actually. I have actually sat there thinking, what would it be like actually to put a knife in the back? And I was telling a friend of mine once, and he said, "You're really scaring me." And he was really serious. Because I had no point of view about it. So actually, what would it be like? And apparently that's psychotic. Oh, okay. So I guess I'm psychotic. And while we're talking about, so, whoops. In
this 10 seconds, in the next 10 seconds,
I'm not going to choose it. It doesn't work. So Josephine's saying Jojo, sorry, he's saying in traditional psychological world it is encouraged, and that's kind of the justifications of stuff and permission, I guess. You know, the statistic about how many people are on psychiatric medication and in therapy is staggering. The whole world thinks somebody else is an expert of who they are, and it's taken me a while to undo my training as a psychiatric NP. And do you know what? That is it. It's like you go and see a doctor, you go and see a specialist because they've trained. And we've bought into this whole thing around you have to go to college to learn how to do something. And there may well be an element of that. But how many children know stuff and they get told off for knowing stuff? You can't possibly know that.
Right.
You cannot possibly know that. And then we start to question ourselves because they feel undermined. You know, they feel undermined because they weren't allowed to know what they knew, and therefore if you do that, then that's just waste. I've wasted all my time getting these qualifications.
You know, part of this for me is how we want to buy that our awareness begins the moment we're born and it ends the moment we die. And I think that's part of what perpetuates or compounds the complication of this is like, are we really entering, how do I say this? Are we really willing to keep denying our awareness of what has occurred before we come into a body and when we leave a body? Like the time in between bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And because what's so interesting is we bring this massive awareness that is us. And then all of this conditioning, you're born, the babies are cared for in this way because we consider them helpless.
Yeah.
Now, granted, you can't pop right out of a womb and go pop something in the microwave for yourself. No, but there's a process, right?
I just went visual on someone putting a baby in a microwave. That's
No, not that. Different conversation. But we make a judgment based on the physical aspect, the physical expression of something, or the physical process of something. And then we make that judgment become a rule and a policy and a procedure and a protocol, rather than acknowledging, oh, this child, okay, this is a being with a little bitty body that right now they're learning how to operate. And what if that didn't mean they knew nothing? What if this was just the interface of acclimating to a body, learning how to function through the physical, in the physical? What if we kept the acknowledgement, oh, I'm trusting that you've brought a wealth of awareness with you, and we get to discover that as you learn how to speak it, as you learn how to work this body. And then rather than the why did you do that kind of thing, I wonder if we could be inviting ourselves and each other to be looking at, wow, what took you to that choice, I wonder.
Yeah.
Were you reacting to something? Were you curious about something? Is there something you knew that you were trying to express? Like, what do you know? And really be tapping into your awareness rather than grasping for some kind of, oh, I just have to find a reason why I did that.
And, when you were talking about that, and, babies being, kind of what they are, and we have to teach them stuff, how much of that is superiority?
Totally.
We lose the sense of superiority because they already know. And as you say, it's a completely different way of functioning with children, is to acknowledge them as infinite beings and have that kind of conversation. Okay, so help me understand, what is it that you were choosing? What was that about? I'm not making it wrong for it. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
And Jono's saying here, it's so often based on reaction, rejection, and projection. Absolutely. Where have we had projected and impelled upon us the need and requirement to always justify and have reasons?
Yeah.
You need a good reason for choosing that. You better have a good reason why your homework's not done. You better have a good reason why, you better have a good reason why you chose what you chose.
I wonder sometimes if people choose to become parents so that they can exact the unkindness that was visited upon them, if they can just like pass it on. It's like some acceptable way that we do that,
It's bullying. It's that, a bully is, was used often, a bully was bullied.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, well, I can pick on, my mother would do that to us because she was of the point of view that we were powerless compared to her because of all the structures and the form and structure that she had created. And because we bought into that, we took on that, we mimicked it, it was impelled upon us, all of that, and we chose to allow it to happen. Because this is the thing, it's like, we've got to get, nothing happened to us without our choice. No one can impel anything on you unless you allow it and choose it to happen. It's not going to work.
But see, there's the kicker for so many people is there's a lot of resistance to that.
Why would I do that? There's got to be a good reason.
Why would I choose to be born in a family that's going to beat me? And this is what it's like. This connects into what I was mentioning earlier about, are we really unwilling to continue denying that you bring information with you? That the choices you make to show up in the family you show up in could be something relative to what you chose 3 lifetimes ago, or whenever, or you chose it wasn't in any lifetime. You just chose it because you were following the energy, and relative to what you're curious about, because we know energy responds, you found what would match that energy. And so this is where we get ourselves so tripped up. It's one of the places, because we do a lot of that. Welcome, Ayla.
Hi, Ayla.
So what is so one, something we could play with is, if you're willing to play with it, for everybody who's willing, is, would you be willing to acknowledge the choices you've made, and everywhere you've defended for or against your choices, would you be willing to, just as those awarenesses come up to you, just, make amends for yourself? And I don't mean make amends for the choice. I mean, just offer the releasing of all of the density and the judgment and the wrongness that you attached to those choices, or the rightness that you attached to those choices, because it works both ways.
Yeah.
And I wonder what that will create the room for to show up.
Are we willing to acknowledge that we are infinite beings?
By and large, no.
So unless and until you get to that moment where you're willing to acknowledge that you're an infinite being with infinite choice and infinite possibilities, then you can do fucking anything.
But I think that's the head trip.
Yeah.
People hear infinite being, and it's like, what the fuck? What's an infinite being, right?
So,
like, infinite is something that you can't justify.
It's like you'll get it when you get it. It's like Cameron will say quite often, you choose it when you choose it. And you know what? Would you be willing to be an allowance for you of where you are right now?
Yeah.
And, I'm going to guide one of my favorite tools that I love ramming down people's throats is, no. distracted. Is universe, show me. Yeah. Universe, show me the infinite being I be.
I love that.
Universe, show me what my life would be like if I created it beyond the requirement for reasons and justifications.
Because this is not... Oh, sorry.
Don't go.
Well, it's not infinitely cognitive.
No.
And I get that that's where a lot of people try to go when they hear the word infinite being. And I know that when I first heard it, I was like, oh, wait a minute. Now, for me, there was a relativeness of ease with that from my experience growing up in theater, dancing, performing, singing, all of that. Arts has a very esoteric nature to it. I had already been playing with, I go beyond the body, because when you're doing different forms of dance, you're following the energy, so I was familiar with a lot of those practices. I just had never really acknowledged, I never really stopped to play with like infinite being, like, wow, like there are no edges of me, and then as I went through some of my different modalities that I played with, there were some very strict kind of applications of those modalities, and like the higher self kind of thing, and the separate parts of my spirit or my soul, and I played with that. And it was interesting when I came to this infinite being, the playing with that energy, for me, that lands more fully and it resonates stronger. And I notice now when I hear people say something about higher self, my soul, my something, I'm looking at just these really clever places of separation, and I don't have an investment that they change how it works for them. I just notice these really subtle ways that we divided ourselves up. And again, what that takes me to is the separation of us from us, and therefore creates the need for justification.
There's another piece in that as you were coming, and I really get that. There is that separation. There is that, and it kind of links in some ways to what I was saying. It's like we have to have rules because that way everyone will choose what will be the kindest for everyone, which of course really works in the world. We've got all these laws in the world. And, yeah, they're working really well. No one's killing each other and bombing and being mean and abusing each other. None of that happens. That's all mind and that's all an illusion. And because if we didn't have the rules, people would do what they wanted and go and kill people. Okay. Right, so because that doesn't happen now, obviously.
It's just funny that, like, the first thing we want to think that we would think to do or choose to do is something harmful.
Right. And
right? It's interesting.
The world would be chaotic if everyone just did what they wanted. And you know what? For me, the piece for that is when you are in the space of infinite space, infinite allowance, infinite kindness, would you ever really choose to go and bomb people just because they had a different point of view than you? No, you wouldn't.
Right.
And so it's like, if we trust our awareness, which of course is being undermined all the time by all of this stuff, you can't know that. The reason we undermine your awareness is so that we can control you. So you never trust your awareness. If we all trusted our awareness, you would know whether someone's about to jump out and shoot you. You wouldn't know why. You just probably wouldn't go down that road. There are loads of stories people tell you about. I don't know why. I just switched lane in the motorway, and when I did, the car next to me, a brick went through the windscreen. It's that kind of stuff. When you're willing to follow that energy, and sometimes you may not even know. It may not be necessarily cognitively obvious why you chose what you chose. We went to. It was fascinating actually, and kind of awe-inspiring for something I've ever experienced before. We went to Northern Ireland, and we happened to be in the town, and there was a whole load of marches going on, and it was really uncomfortable.
Like protest marches?
Well, they do it quite a lot in Northern Ireland with the loyalists trying to, they want to stay British, and
like rallies and
and so these really kind of quite aggressive people were kind of marching, and I totally got the awareness when we were in the hotel in the evening that if Bill and I hadn't been out in the town that day, it would have erupted in violence. Now, I can't tell you cognitively how I knew that. I just knew it. I just knew that was the case.
And did you have to do anything with it?
No, I just no.
Right? Yeah.
So that's the kind of awareness I'm talking about, is that doesn't make cognitive sense, will never make cognitive or logical sense. And because of that, because we've been so entrained for everything to make logical sense, we mistrust ourselves. And that, again, is so that we can be controlled. It's easy to control people when they don't trust themselves and their awareness. So we're going to keep putting on you that we're going to impel upon you that you do require reasons and justifications. And how many lifetimes have we added to that?
And to be across the board here, when we're being impelled, as long as we're willing to receive that, it will happen.
Yeah.
And so for all of you who have found your way to these kinds of conversations, would you just acknowledge that now is a time you're choosing to no longer buy that? So when we're talking about being impelled with points of view, we're not making you a victim in that point either. No. So just know that I'm fully acknowledging the family I showed up in, I chose to show up in. And for the time that I chose to take on their stuff, I took it on. And now, in this part of my journey and my process and my adventures, I'm much more in my awareness of, I don't have to hold on to that anymore. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't make them wrong for throwing their shit at me. I threw a whole lot of shit at people plenty of times in my life. It's just a popular game that we play until we choose something different. And so another component of this that was coming up as you were talking, Alan, was it might be constructive or generative to also be acknowledging where we've been the one who wanted to be controlling. and we've been asking someone or something for justification. Like, are we asking
You're so in my
life
head.
to
That's
justify
exactly
itself?
where I was going.
So, like, how much are we in expectation or projecting our judgment into the world or onto other people? And we could be doing it totally unconsciously. But like when we go in, I know when I go into reaction, if I go into, well, WTF did you do that for? You know, kind of thing. And that's not really creating a space that I want to create. And yet I'm aware that sometimes I go there, and I'm willing to let myself go there. And the moment I have my awareness of, oh, maybe I could do this different, or do I want to do this different, I can make a different choice, and I can ask a question.
That comes back to the expectations we have of other people, the conclusions we've made about them, the decisions we've decided about what our relationship is or isn't. And I think about some of the times where, you know, I've confronted Bill, and it has been confrontation about something he's done repeatedly. He can never, ever give me, because I've already concluded it's bad and wrong, he will never, ever be able to give me a good enough justification or reason for choosing.
Right.
Ever. And he was just following the energy of what was fun for him. And he doesn't have a justification. I just chose it. And he's been saying that to me for 22 years. I just chose that. And it's only as we're having this conversation that I'm actually hearing almost my own words coming back at me of, I just chose it. I don't need to, I don't need to justify it. I just chose it. It felt right for me at the time. And it's like, does that work for me?
I love that.
Yeah. I just chose it. I don't know why I did it. Well, and I'm like, well, you must know why you did it, because you know, it's like, it's obviously about me. You obviously did it to get at me. What the fuck makes me think that I am so important in his life that every choice he makes is about me? I'm going to go and do this with this person just to be mean to him. Really? And I know that there's an element there of where I've done that to people, not in that, but I've done stuff with other people or to other people to get back at someone else. I know I've done that.
Oh yeah, it's a popular game.
You know, I'm really good at it. I can be really vicious and nasty. It's like, wow, it's a capacity I have.
Yeah.
It's a cruel abuse that I kind of picked up from my mother, and she picked it up from her mother, and so it's kind of, it goes on. It's not about blaming her.
What is the potency underneath that? Like, if it wasn't disguised as that expression, what is that potency?
Willing to be and do whatever it takes to create what I want.
Yeah. To
get the outcome I desire, I'm willing to be and do whatever it takes to create it, even if that means at the time being cruel to people. And, you know, we can all do that. And the question I would ask is, do you know, I have no point of view about it. If that's what you want to do, cool. What's that creating for you? Is it kind to you? Is it kind to them? Is it fun for you? Is it creating ease in your life? And, you know, you don't have to choose something else. It's just, that's great. You know, I can do that. Shannon O'Hara was in a class once. She's Gary Douglas's daughter, and she can be incredibly confrontational and arrogant, and so can Gary, and so can we all. And so she was at the microphone, and she was talking to Gary about that, and she was saying, you know, people really kind of, you know, don't like me, and he was saying, it's because you're confrontational. He said, no, I don't have a point of view about that, but what you've got to ask yourself is, what's it creating?
Yeah.
Is it creating ease for you and everyone else? Is it creating that kind of communion and willingness for people to kind of co-create with you? And she doesn't take any prisoners, and sometimes that's actually required, and sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's not the most effective way of creating what you would like. Okay, great, interesting choice. What else can I choose?
And another little component I get too here is that really, no matter what we say, if we were to come up with the right and perfect answer for whomever we're talking to, they're still going to have the filters that they have in place that they interpret our conversation through, right? And so I wonder what it would take for us to be willing to simply say, it was the choice I chose. Kind of like what you were talking about with Bill. That's what I chose. I was following the energy. It was fun for me. I was curious, whatever, rather than, well, I had to do this to get this, to put this here, to talk to this person, and I had to do this, and it couldn't work, and then I created this, and so I did this, and blah, blah, blah. Are you exhausted yet?
I know.
Right? And that's part of this cycle of, really, we could call it a cycle of abuse, like much like what you and I were talking about before we started recording was, the places that we're abusing ourselves. And Delaney published a beautiful video today, August 23rd. I saw it on social media, and that's what Alan and I were talking about before we started recording, was her awareness that she was sharing about the places that she was discovering she was still perpetrating abuse against herself. And we were looking at how subtle that can show up. And it's still an unkindness to us. It's abusive. So if we're trying to justify ourselves, whatever the reason, is there a good reason? Is there a reason required? Is there a reason required for you to exist? And is there ever a reason that you would have to justify yourself?
No, there isn't. And I mean, there's another conversation here about manipulation and being willing to say what the person requires, not being willing to be totally aware of what the person requires to hear, being willing to say that without buying the story that you're telling in order to get the result that you would like. But we've made manipulation such a bad and wrong tool.
Yeah. So I wonder, what if manipulation could be as simple as allowing people to think what they think?
Yeah.
What if that could be a form of manipulation? Now, that might create some intensity for us in those moments, and we might have to pull some tools out of our quiver and process ourselves or phone a friend, but I wonder, would you be willing to let that ripple go into the universe and just let them have their shit? Whether that was something that they were chewing on, like eating glass, or whether they were like, oh my God, you're so awesome and I love you. And like, regardless of what their response to you was, could you just let them have their point of view?
Well, that's the thing about, I used to fight all the time with my mother because she always had to be right. And I realized that I mimicked that because, it was like, well, if she makes me wrong, then I'm bad, I'm stupid, because that's also what I kind of had believed. And it's now at the point where I would like to be in the space with her where I just let her say what she needs saying. Do you know what? You're absolutely right. And actually, so sometimes that's let me acknowledge that. Actually, sometimes I do that. Because that's what she needs to hear. For her, she will, it's like I would be going backwards and forwards with her. It would cause a lot of kind of angst, where I can just kind of say to her, do you know what? You're absolutely right. Does it mean I have to do anything with it afterwards? No, I could just let her have that point of view. And also there are the ones where what she wants me to do is actually what I wanted to do in the first place, but she wants to make it her idea.
Right.
All about her when I told you to do that and blah, blah, blah. It's like, at the end of the day, does it really matter that whether it's her idea or your idea if you're doing what you want?
Exactly.
Just wondering. Does it make you less than to allow someone else to be right if that's what they really, really want, and you're still going to do what you want anyway?
Oh, I like that. That's a great question. Wow. So does it make you less than to let anyone else have their point of view, have what they desire?
If you're going to do what you want anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. Oh my goodness, Alan.
We're at top of the
That's
hour.
the only thing about our conversations. It's like we get to the hour in and then we're like, oh, there's more.
There's so much more to this. There's so many elements to this whole reasons and justifications. So everything that is, let's put it to one side. And what's beyond that? So choosing beyond justifying and reasons. Yeah, it's like, what can we create from this space? If you never had to justify or have a reason for anything ever again, and all of that resistance has just come up, do you want to just like chuck that away, let it go? Because I can feel it. It's like, wow. And where you're fighting for your right to hold on to your reasons and justifications, every day you're hanging on to that. In nails, right? Let go. Right, wrong, good, bad, pop, pot, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. I don't usually use the clearing statement in these conversations, but that felt required.
Yeah, just everywhere you discover,
Hey, Pussycat.
like any moment that you are trying to go into a need, that you find yourself functioning from a need to justify. If you're able to stop yourself in that moment and go into some questions and just whatever your awareness is, oh, okay. I've had lots of moments that in the process that I'm going through right now that I could feel that tug. Like I wanted to be able to give reasons and explanations and, about what I'm creating and where my life is and la, la, la. And it's like, oh my gosh. I mean, it actually devalues me. Like I'm getting more and more how I'm actually devaluing myself when I go into that.
Mm-hmm.
So the moment I'm opening my mouth to try and explain whatever, to justify what I've created, what I haven't created, what I am creating, I'm actually, with that judgment that I'm placing on my creation, I'm actually killing my creation. So what else could we be choosing? If we were truly honoring, that's the thing. It's like, are we willing to honor us? Are you willing to honor you? Is a big question.
Mm-hmm.
And not at the resistance of, not in a way of resisting or from the energy of resisting something else, just really honoring you. Just really being you, present for you, being with you. And if somebody isn't really interested in knowing you, again, would there be a reason to stay in the conversation with them? If they're already showing you that they're not interested, right?
Just stop the conversation now then.
It's like, and how many of us do that? We have that conversation, we stay in that conversation, and we get triggered into that cycle, and it's exhausting, and all we're doing is
fighting for the rightness of our point of view.
Yeah. And it's pointless, really.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of that conversation, what would have changed?
Well, true story. And so what happens when you keep fighting for the rightness of your point of view is we have people bombing each other.
Yeah.
That's what happens when we're into reasons and justifications.
Yeah.
Which is the everything is the opposite of what it appears to me. This is, for me, what is the irony about having laws and rules and stuff is you make these laws and rules so that people don't go and bomb each other, because if we didn't have the laws and rules, people would go and bomb each other. I wonder whether that would actually happen.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay.
Oh boy. So is there some things, does anybody have any questions before we start to wrap this up? Like I meant to say that earlier. Is there anything that's like just not landing or landing sideways, or do you want to ask about it, or a comment that came up for you, an awareness you're having? We love throwing all that into the mix. So just unmute yourself and jump in, or you can put it into the chat. And wow. Yeah, if you're landing on this conversation as a replay, again, thank you for coming to play with us. And thank you for everybody who's playing with us live. Yay! And know that you are contributing to this conversation. So as you're having awareness of whatever kind, being a part of this conversation whenever you're being that, know that that is contributing to all of us. So, let go of the rules. I love that, Jojo. Thank you.
Prohibition. I need more alcohol.
Yeah, what if there was no rule? What if there's no rule that says you have to justify any choice you ever make? What if it's just about the curiosity of what does your choice create? And then you get to choose if it was fun for you to create or not, and you can choose to create something different.
You know, we did the radio show Playground Possibilities recently with the freedom of a deconstructed life of living. And, you know, I get that that's a conversation we could have here as well of the reference points we use to navigate our reality. If I didn't have these reference points or I didn't have these reasons of justifications, I wouldn't know how to function.
Yeah.
Is that true? I wonder.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow. So how can folks play with you a little bit more, Alan, if they want to?
You can come and play with me at the Playground Possibilities on Mondays, 3 p.m. UK, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific.
It's an awesome show.
Midnight in Brisbane, 10 p.m. in Perth. 11 p.m. in Japan. Talking clock. And
early morning, late at night.
Yeah. And so we've got that. We've also got the Possibility Portal, which is a place where you can receive monthly, another conversation like this with kind of facilitation on what's going on for you, with a support group and all sorts of other goodies. I have a 30-day program of questions of awesomeness that you can find. And all of this stuff is on my website, which is, you'll see on the, actually it's cut off. So it's Alun, ALUN-Jones.com. You can go and have a look on there. There are all the information on how to play with me is there. And I'm all over Facebook. So yeah, if I can be of any assistance to you, then just ask, because, you know, I love playing with people.
Yeah.
And thank you, Ayla, and thank you, Josephine.
Thank you, Ayla. Yes. Everybody.
Marta.
Oh. And come play with me on Fridays if you want to play more on Living Well. My radio show is on A2Zen as well.
Pretty awesome.
Thank you. And this Friday, if you're watching this before August the 26th, 11 a.m. Eastern, we're going to be visiting with Jen Posick about would you like Facebook to be your friend? And this particular conversation will be about having fun with Facebook and growing your business, and what would it be like if that could increase your money flows? And you never had to justify it. You don't have to justify choosing that.
You just choose it. And people can play with you on Tuesdays as well, you and Rhonda.
Tuesdays as well, yes. We have another show. It's in the form of a webinar, and it's at 12 noon Eastern time. It's called Sexually Speaking. And if you pop over to my radio page on A2Zen, that is A2Zen.fm, just in case it was unclear, you can actually find the links on any of my pages, any of my show postings, that you can click on the link to join any of those. So, and I have a summer special going too. If you want to play with me individually, you can find my summer special on my Living Well Facebook page, and it's a 2020 session all about getting clarity, 20 minutes for $20, and it's good through the end of September. And if you want to work with Alan and I together, we offer that as well. So any way that would be fun for you, and come join us again on Choosing Beyond Beyond. You can find that on Facebook as well if you're watching this and you haven't heard about us on Choosing Beyond Beyond. And our next conversation, do we want to visit and see if it's changed, or do we want to give people a little tease?
Let's give them that little bit of...
So next time we will be talking about choosing beyond, creating your life in spite of money.
I know.
The energy of that, just like... I love it. So we will announce the date for that. We won't make you wait as long as we did make you wait for this one, but we'll announce the date of that on our Choosing Beyond page, and we'll be promoting that shortly as well. So, gosh, whatever you do, folks, what if you could just choose?
Yeah.
For the fun of choosing, no other reason, just for the fun of choosing. So maybe just play with once a day. What is something fun you could choose just for the fun of choosing it?
Yeah. What can I choose today that's fun for me?
Yeah. And I wonder what your life would show you if you'd be willing to let it. So thank you for everything you're choosing and being and going beyond and choosing beyond. And Alan, thank you for choosing to play with me.
Pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Oh, you have the control. You have the dash. I don't. So I'll let you do the clicking of the button. And have a great however long in the meantime. We'll see you on the next Choosing Beyond, folks.
Yeah. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you.